Legal Tender Act, 37th Congress, Session 2, Chapter 142, July 11th, 1862. Be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America in Congress assembled, that the Secretary of the Treasury is hereby authorized to issue, in addition to the amounts heretofore authorized, on the credit of the United States, $150 millions of United States notes, not bearing interest, payable to bearer at the Treasury of the United States, and of such denominations as he may deem expedient. Provided that no note shall be issued for the fractional part of $1, and not more than 35 millions shall be of lower denominations than $5. And such notes shall be receivable in payment of all loans made to the United States, and of all taxes, internal duties, excesses, debts, and demands of every kind due to the United States, except duties on imports and interest, and of all claims and demands against the United States, except for interest upon bonds, notes, and certificates of debt or deposit, and shall also be lawful money and the legal tender and payment of all debts, public and private, within the United States, except duties on imports and interest, as aforesaid. And any holder of said United States notes depositing any sum not less than $50, or some multiple of $50, with the Treasurer of the United States, or either of the Assistant Treasurers, shall receive in exchange therefor duplicate certificates of deposit, one of which may be transmitted to the Secretary of the Treasury, who shall thereupon issue to the holder an equal amount of bonds of the United States, coupon or registered, as may by said holder be desired, bearing interest at the rate of 6 per cent per annum, payable semi-annually, and redeemable at the pleasure of the United States after 5 years, and payable 20 years from the date thereof. Provided, however, that any notes issued under this act may be paid in coin, instead of being received in exchange for certificates of deposit as above specified, at the direction of the Secretary of the Treasury, and the Secretary of the Treasury may exchange for such notes, on such terms as he shall think most beneficial to the public interest, any bonds of the United States bearing 6 per cent interest, and redeemable after 5 and payable in 20 years, which have been or may be lawfully issued under the provisions of any existing act, may reissue the notes so received in exchange, may receive and cancel any notes heretofore lawfully issued under any act of Congress, and in lieu thereof issue an equal amount in notes such as are authorized by this act, and may purchase at rates not exceeding that of the current market, and cost of purchase not exceeding 1/8 of 1 per cent, any bonds or certificates of debt of the United States as he may deem advisable. Section 2. And be it further enacted, that the Secretary of the Treasury be, and is hereby authorized, in case he shall think it inexpedient to procure said notes, or any part thereof, to be engraved and printed by contract, to cause the said notes, or any part thereof, to be engraved, printed, and executed, in such form as he shall prescribe, at the Treasury Department in Washington, and under his direction, and is hereby empowered to purchase and provide all the machinery and materials, and to employ such persons and appoint such officers as may be necessary for this purpose. Section 3. And be it further enacted, that the limitation upon temporary deposits of United States notes with any assistant treasurer, or designated depository authorized by the Secretary of the Treasury to receive such deposits, to $50 millions be, and is hereby repealed. And the Secretary of the Treasury is authorized to receive such deposits, under such regulations as he may prescribe, to such amount as he may deem expedient, not exceeding $100 millions, for not less than 30 days, and sums not less than $100, at a rate of interest not exceeding 5 per cent per annum. And any amount so deposited may be withdrawn from deposit, at any time after 10 days' notice, on the return of the certificate of deposit. and of the amount of United States notes authorized by this act, not less than $50 million shall be reserved for the purpose of securing prompt payment of such deposits when demanded, and shall be issued and used only when, in the judgment of the Secretary of the Treasury, the same or any part thereof may be needed for that purpose. And certificates of deposit and of indebtedness issued under this or former acts may be received on the same terms as United States notes in payment for bonds redeemable after 5 and payable in 20 years. Section 4. And be it further enacted that the Secretary of the Treasury may, at any time until otherwise ordered by Congress, and under the restrictions imposed by the Act to authorize a national loan and for other purposes, borrow on the credit of the United States such part of the sum of $250 millions mentioned in said Act as may not have been borrowed, under the provisions of the same, within 12 months from the passage thereof. Section 5. And be it further enacted that any part of the appropriation of $10,000 for the detection and bringing to trial of persons engaged in counterfeiting the coin of the United States, made by the act entitled, "An Act Making Appropriations for the Legislative, Executive, and Judicial Expenses of the Government for the Year ending 30th of June, 1861," approved June 23, 1860. May be applied in detecting and bringing to trial and punishment persons engaged in counterfeiting Treasury notes, bonds, or other securities of the United States, as well as the coin of the United States. And to carry into effect the preceding sections of this Act, the sum of $300,000 is hereby appropriated, out of any money in the Treasury not otherwise appropriated. Section 6. And be it further enacted that all the provisions of the Act entitled, "An Act to authorize the issue of United States notes, and for the redemption or funding thereof, and for funding the floating debt of the United States," approved February 25, 1862, so far as the same can or may be applied to the provisions of this Act, and not inconsistent therewith, shall apply to the notes hereby authorized to be issued. Approved July 11, 1862.